The gender expression is how we present, right? All of us express in certain ways, some of it gender-oriented and some not. Gender non-conforming are people that don't conform with social or societal expectations. Gender queer is a broad term, and that's the beauty of it. We've come up with a couple of queer terms, and I know for older folks that that's a difficult term that we're trying to bring back and claim, but it's also allowed us to expand so that we can welcome everybody, right? In whatever presentation or difference or diversity is true for you. Okay, cross-dressing, important to note that a person isn't necessarily, and quite often is not, uncomfortable with who they are. They just enjoy dressing as a different sex, okay? I would say I was a cross-dresser, but I didn't enjoy that, okay? And it's interesting because we're coming on Halloween. Every Halloween I think about this, I think. You know, people say, are you going to dress up? I said, no, I did that for 50 years. So sexual orientation, you know this, is about who we're romantically, emotionally attracted to. And transgender people can be any sexual orientation, right? Any sexual orientation. For me, and it's interesting, this word came to me, you know, when we talk about orientation, I'm hopelessly lost, okay, wherever I go. So I always have to orient myself. It's not about sexual orientation, it's about just orienting myself. And I realized that that also is very true of the life I lived before transition. Because, you know, if I go into a mall, I always go in the same entranceway. I mark the stores that I'm going to come back out. I mean, I'm really that way. But I did that all through my life. I had to look at a ladies' room and remind myself and train myself that that was for me. So I always had to orient myself to what was expected of me as far as how I dressed, the room I used. When people said, you know, we're having a meeting for ladies, you know, down the hall, that they were talking to me too. So I trained myself to do all of that. Very difficult, by the way, because it's really not natural. You know, in the Bible it talks about natural. What's natural for me isn't the way I lived. I was living unnaturally, quite frankly, to what was natural for me. All right, so recent laws. I want to get into this because this is really, you know this. You've been hearing it all around. I just want you to feel for a second the pain in our community, the transgender community, around the things around bathrooms and stuff like that. It is, we become a target, you all know that, okay? But it's very painful. It was difficult life to begin with. And here's the thing, I went to a rally and the kids put on the rally when the guidelines were revoked by the government. And the kids, they were 17 years old, they're high schoolers, and they put on this rally. So we went to it, and I was kind of glad. They pushed us to the side, and they did the speeches, and they talked about it. And here's what one kid said, I never believed that in my lifetime, imagine that, 17, my lifetime, I would ever see the government against me. Okay? So there are and that's what we see, all right? It started with bathrooms and legislating bathrooms. But here's the thing. I love props. So this is the bathroom sign I think should be on every bathroom. Right? Oh, sorry. Okay. You're in the right place. And just leave it there, okay? Literally. Okay, so there are over 200 state-level bills that are being introduced. You see what the government is doing, right? Step by step. The thing about the guidelines, by the way, and what was really troubling to me about the guidelines is the message we're telling children. Okay, so I want you to hear what I heard when I heard that. Because we're telling children that they are not safe with one another. I want you to get that. Because by making it a target, you know they did this with the gay and lesbian folk, right? They said that we were predators and all that. And they used that fear tactic very effectively. And then started to use that on the transgender community. What you're introducing now is sexuality. And now you took it to children. I want you to get that. That's horrific to me. Because we're telling children they're not safe with one another sexually in school. Okay? So there's that. The other thing that's really horrifying to me is that the subliminal message to that and what they see what's happening to us at the adult level is that it does not get better. Hear that? Okay? We got the Trevor Project, right? It gets better, it gets better. Not for us, it doesn't. As soon as you become, now we've got pat-downs, and now we've got laws that are legislating bathrooms, and we can't move freely. I traveled to Arizona. Somebody told me that when I left for Arizona, as this was all happening, be careful, take your passport with you, you never know. I'm going to Arizona, not Pakistan, okay? And all of a sudden I realized I'm not free or safe in this country. And now I'm only staying in Connecticut for 3 more years, okay? I mean, that's really, I can't move freely. That's the way it feels. And when I go, I have to recognize I'm not safe. But there are over 200 state level bills that are being introduced as well. So this is an ongoing attack that's happening by government. It's Religious Freedom Act. And if that, or the religious freedom bills, and if that doesn't break your heart, I don't know what does. That in the name of God, and this is nothing new under the sun, as you know, but to use the name of God to do this is really, it is a grave sin. And one that we'll pay for many generations, is to do this to folks. Okay, so what's happening now at the legislative level, on just September 7th, very interesting, the U.S. Justice Department came and offered a brief urging the Supreme Court to give businesses that serve the wide-ranging license to discriminate against LGBT Americans. And what was interesting was the response of the court. The court said the government has never been on both sides of an argument. They're on both sides of the argument. The government is presenting to enshrine discrimination. All right, the housing, we're protected under the Fair Housing. I want to step back for a second to say that on state level, we have gender identity expression protected in a number of states. There are 20 states in D.C., Connecticut's among them, Massachusetts, but I didn't see New York or Pennsylvania. So some of the folks here may not have state level protection. And there's also another bill which we passed in Connecticut which stops conversion therapy, okay? And I'm actually we're doing at church, we're working with a young high schooler who's doing a social justice project around conversion therapy. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. And he said he didn't get the whole treatment, but they called him and to the altar, and he had to pray for hours and things like that because he had divulged that he had these feelings, okay? And the harm that's being done in religion, goes on. So that breaks, of course, my heart. Healthcare. Healthcare is, of course, very personal to me because I work in a healthcare setting also. But here's the thing, and I would also tell you that I held one of the 40% in the hospital not very long ago. And it's the first time I've ever had that happen. And by the way, I'm part of the 40%, just so you know that. And most of us are, okay? This person, I was called up to a room because everybody tells me if there's somebody there I might be the best chaplain for. And so I went into this room, and this person had attempted suicide. And and of all chaplains to be called, right? This was a transgender woman. And here's the thing about that. I get chills telling the story because why me? Why then? Why did this happen? That's all God. That I would be on that night for this person. And so I sat with her, was not her at first, and I said, what name and pronoun would you prefer? And she said, and she told me, and I said, would you mind if I called you that? And she said, no, I'd love that. I said, would you mind if the staff called you that? She said, wow, no. So I trained all the staff, and I went upstairs, followed her to the next room, but she said to me, she goes, because I said to her right after that, I said, well, here's the thing. You want to know how much God loves you? I'm transgender. That's how much God loves you, to send me to you tonight. And she said, will you hug me? And I hugged her for a long time. She says, we're all children of God. And sit with that. I said, amen. Okay, so health insurance, the CARE Act. Affordable Care Act protects us right now. And so all this talk around it is very concerning because it prohibits discrimination. And I want to tell you about health care for a second, forgetting whether you're covered by a policy or not. I want to tell you about health care, and HIPAA, we're protected by that too, because this is a medical condition. But I want to tell you, and 1 in 5 of us, we know this, right? 1 in 5 of us will be refused treatment. We know that we've had siblings of ours parked in an emergency department hallway, and we don't know what to do with that, or we can't do any, and had somebody die, or had some buddies die. Okay, so we know what we're going to. I haven't had a primary care physician in 10 years. 10 years. I don't want to train somebody. I don't want to go through that. I go through emergency department, walk in when I need to. I don't want to deal with that, because here's the thing, at my most vulnerable, and now I can speak for many in this community, you don't know on the other side of those hands, and that's exactly what I said. I said, on the other side of those hands, I don't know if there's a compassionate heart, an open mind. I don't know if there's biases, bigotry. I don't know if that's going to come through the care you give me. And I don't know if you're qualified, educated, and compassionate enough to give me the care I need. Okay? Most of us train our doctors about the care we need. Okay? I had to out myself. I'm having a simple procedure, nothing to worry about, on Monday. But I had to, she said, have you ever had a surgery? I go, yes, and I'm not telling you what it is. She said, well, you have to. I said, no, I don't. I'm not going to tell you what it is. And she says, then I'll put down none. I said, you can't put down none. I've had general anesthesia. I want you to know that. I do fine with it. I'm not telling you what the surgery is. She goes, then I'm putting none. Okay. So I said, okay, now I'll tell you what it is. And I said, I tell you we're going off rails now. And I said, I had a hysterectomy. And now we went off rails, okay? And she said, I'm horrified to hear that you would be afraid to tell me that. I said, well, look around you, because you can't assume anybody around you is going to treat me as you do, okay? So it was an interesting experience. The other thing about it is we often will not disclose our medications. If we're on hormonal replacement, we will not share that. I had a car accident some years ago, and while I'm on 95, being strapped to a board, they asked me if I'm on medications. I said no. I sat there not worrying about my body. I was worried about whether they'd take me to the hospital if I told them I was on testosterone. Okay? So this is the life we live. This is the level of anxiety and even fear we can have. And I certainly have it. Okay, so I want to tell you a couple of other quick stories. We did a Christmas miracle this last December. It was somebody a transgender woman walked into our congregation, and she was hanging an ornament on our tree. And I never met her before. And as pastors, we got to go right over to the tree, right? Hi, how are you? Did you enjoy the service? All of that. She goes, I did. I said, I hope we'll see you again. This is what we say, right? Make sure people are welcome. And she said, you probably won't see me again. And I said, why not? And did something happen here? And she goes, no, I'll be in prison. And I said, why would you be in prison? And she said, I think we need to sit down. With the ornament in hand, we sit down and we have an hour conversation about how the system does not, believe me when I tell you, the system works against us, especially with name changes. And so by no fault of her own, she was in default that 2 court systems couldn't agree what was the right thing for her to do, New York and Connecticut. And so there was a warrant out for her arrest. And she was appearing in court on Thursday, and she knew she was going to prison, okay? She would be dead that night, and it wouldn't be pretty, okay? I'm just saying that, and we all knew that. I mean, anybody transgender knows that. She's going to male prison, and she's not going to survive that night, okay? So we did a fundraiser. We raised enough, to keep her from going to jail, and she's been attending. She's a member now. But here's the thing I want to leave you with, is that we showed up at that courtroom, and this is really a powerful moment. We sat in that courtroom, and on that side were the people against who use old names and pronouns. And on this side were all the people supporting her, all right? And she had to come up with $1,000 that day, or she was going to prison. And so there was a break, and I told the lawyer, I said, our church will pay it. He said, what? I said, our church will pay it. He says, okay. So we go back in, and the judge says, she's got to pay $1,000 today. And the lawyer stands up and says, well, we've got the pastor from MCC Hartford here. He says the church is going to pay it. The judge says, what? He said, the church is going to pay it. This went back and forth about 5 times. He asked, they called me forward, they made me swear in. He asked me how that was going to happen. I told him fundraising. Apparently he doesn't know church. He doesn't know about spaghetti and meatballs, okay? We can serve spaghetti and meatballs, okay? So we ended up raising $3,000 for her. She stayed out of prison. She got back on track. And her worries are not completely behind her, but we made sure one of our own did not end up with the system where the system wanted to send her. And here's the thing, when we had that spaghetti and meatball dinner, all of the community came because they knew. And I said to everybody then, I said, look around you. We're all going to be okay because look around you. That's the power of our community.